Schimbare și leadership, domnul Mansour are o vastă experiență în proiectarea, implementarea și managementul unor programe de formare și dezvoltare cu accentul pe strategii de naționalizare. Oussama are experiență internațională semnificativă în zona de Golf și Orientul Mijlociu și este capabil să furnizeze servicii de recrutare, evaluare, feedback 360 și să implementeze sisteme de management al performanței la cele mai înalte standarde. Oussama Mansour este auditor certificat și deține un master în inginerie mecanică, economie internațională și MBA în HR. Oussama Mansour.
Thank you. It was a long one. Hello, salute. Say here. Finally, my turn came. I don't know whether I'm supposed to be the waking up call or to make sure that you sleep finally for the end of the day. But what I'd like to achieve today, especially the topic of strategic leadership pipeline. When we talk about strategic leadership, probably most of us will think about processes and structures. In my presentation on the next minutes here, I'm combining two dimensions of leadership. I'll begin with the technical side, which I will run through it very fast. But then I will move to a totally different world in terms of leadership, and that is the self and the us. And we're going to transform the way we look at leadership, hopefully from today onward, as whatever we're going to be presented is in line what every other speaker has presented, specifically when it comes to the inside-out approach rather than being imposed on leadership skills. How many of us, when they woke up this morning, said, today I'll make a difference? I don't want to have hands up, but how often do we actually look forward to wake up every morning and go to our work? And how often do we program ourselves that I want to make a difference today? Not many, unfortunately, when it comes to a practical life. We seem to be just wake up, do what we have to do, and then go back to our houses, to our homes and families, and continue doing what we are used to do. Sometimes we are not in that mindfulness stage. I like to think of leadership as someone who wants to make a difference every day of their life, in every moment of their life. Have you seen people with whom, if you sit, they suck all the energy from you, and all they say is negative? I call it the vomiting meeting, because they keep vomiting. And how often, if you compare that to how many times do we sit with people who actually you feel you gain energy from them? You felt good. You felt you've earned something better by being around them. Unfortunately, we tend to sit with and hear more of the negative side of life. For us as leaders, what comes to your mind when the term leadership or leadership development is mentioned? Can I have some answers, any contributions? What comes to your mind when you hear the term leader or leadership development? Anybody? End of the day?
Inspiration.
Inspiration? Pardon me? A path? Self-motivation? Dynamics? Creativity? If that comes to your mind, when Derek asked you who in this room has a leadership role, about 1/3 only said yes, and the rest did not say they have leadership role. What do you think the main assumption here? Very often, we look at leadership, succession planning, everything you just mentioned, delivering results, building certain skills, and it's a job title. And that's why probably when you were asked who performs a leadership role, we thought, do I have that leadership title? Am I a supervisor? Am I a manager? Am I a director? And if I'm not, it means I'm not a leader. And that is a fatal, fundamental mistake in organizations where we have confined the term leadership within job titles, within individuals according to their seniority in the organization. As a result of that, we tend to lose a lot on good potential of leaders, and we tend to lose a lot on working, bringing the best in people around us. I like to think of leadership for all of us based on these characteristics. What do you think the worst descriptors of women in leadership. Let's take with this one. The Ice Queen, being tough and being masculine. You all probably have seen the movie Devil with a Wearing Prada.
Yes.
That's the Ice Queen. Or masculine, because she's performing good leadership roles, so she must be a man, she must be masculine, or she must be tough. Another description, the opposite, weak, angry, a cheerleader. So if a lady is actually engaged with the team, we don't call her that she is doing a great job, she's a great leader, we say she's a cheerleader. And if we look at great women, we say they are single and lonely. Because if they were not single and lonely, they wouldn't reach where they were, or where they are. Or, the best is conniving, I always mispronounce this word. A lady reached that position because she planned it to be there. She manipulated her way, short skirt, or emotional. These are some, and the last one, which my favorite, is a woman leader is a token. And I profoundly reject the idea that we must have on our board 5% of our board members should be women. Why should I have that percentage? When a woman is capable of performing the role, why not have 100% of the board members to be women? Why only 5%? Why 3%? So using women in the context of leadership as a token to perform certain roles. You'll find more about this if you visit Forbes, because they've done a lot of studies about the descriptors of women in leadership and the stereotypes. I'm sharing this with you because when we want to look at leadership and design leadership programs, if you look at the characteristics of leaders, the competencies we look at, we mainly look at masculinity, tough, assertive, somebody who can drive. Because anything opposite to that means weakness in competency and in leadership. What we also look at, the differentiation between the masculine descriptors, being assertive, being dominant, being forcible, being competitive, and the feminine one, being affectionate. And somehow, we just confined that leadership is in the masculine definition, not a combination of both. And that's a fatal mistake when we work with organizations to design leadership competency models. As a result of this, we always look for role congruity. So if you are masculine, you're forceful, you're competitive, you drive results, that's now you are incongruent of the role that we expect, but we look the opposite in a negative manner. Women, whatever they do, they're always in trouble. Because if you show your emotional intelligence, it's considered weakness. If you show your great leadership capacity, it's considered masculinity. And we don't know anymore which is where the balance should be. Now, we discover this a lot when it comes to leadership, and I have in the group, out of 25 members, I would have 80% of them are women, and only the rest 20% are men. That's when we start having challenge with these descriptors. I like to shift now and move from leadership under titles to leadership without titles. That's a key message that I like to communicate. That leadership should not be confined to a job title in the organization. It is the responsibility of every individual in the organization, of every person on the street out here in Romania. And this means we have to learn how to take ownership. Very often, how many of you have their mission, vision, and values on a plate inside their organizations? Okay? And how much of that is being actually implemented? We live it. Let us not raise our hands. Big gap between the two. Taking ownership, if I can establish a culture of leadership that people can take ownership in organizations, I will need lesser control and I will have more creativity, more input, more initiative from people around us. But to do this, you have to have three conditions. You have to care, you have to understand, and you have to help. How do I know a caring mother from a non-caring mother? What is the main differentiating line between a caring to a non-caring, a biological mother versus a caring mother. The caring mother will always ask, what did you eat today? What did you study at school? How did it go at school? A biological standard transactional mother would say, did you go to school? Yes, tick the box. Did you have your meal? Yes, tick the box. And accordingly, if you look at leaders and managers, or any individual, how many of us actually care about what they do, care about their organizations, and do understand their organizations and understand the environment, the people they deal with? Have you seen those managers who bring the worst in you? They have a PhD in getting the worst in any one of you. And there are managers, you somehow blossom around them because they bring the best in you. Of course, the one that brings the best in us is the one who actually delivers, who cares about us. They don't see us as a number in organizations. Then we looked at characteristics of leaders. And this is actually coming from real projects with real people over a span of 8 years of work. And in order for us to be a good leader, I need to learn, I need to care for people around us. I need to care for the organization. I need to care for the community I'm in. How many of our politicians care about us? I don't think anyone cares about us. They care about how much goes in the bank account. That's what's important. I need to make sure that we establish trust. Do we trust our leaders? Do we trust the people that we are working with? And we'd like to establish for ourselves to be empathetic and be encouraging. Be a source of positive energy to encourage people, empathize, learn, not sympathize with people. Provide the necessary support with them, and share information, share our knowledge, share our experience with those leaders. How many of us have dreams? They dream big, have the courage to dream big, you know. And if you spoke about it, you have dream big, you dream big. What is the accusation? What do people tell you? No. You are a dreamer, you are probably louder, and you're lucky if they tell you, well done, keep going. But most of the time, they find every reason to shoot your dreams down. Either because this is Romania, you know, who are we? Or because you are a woman, or you're a man, or you're young, or you're old, you're short, whatever. They will find every reason to shoot your dreams down. Now, if it's your choice, you can allow me to shoot your dreams down, but don't wonder later my actions became negative. Or you could actually help me understand and build on my dream, build momentum, and become a more productive member in the organization and in the society. And the project we are talking about is happening in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi, the capital, in Doha and Qatar. These cities, the governments decided not to go the negative way. And in fact, if anybody talks negatively within those government organizations, they are on the target list, either shape up or get out. Because they wanted to say, can we create leaders, can we create people who are capable of thinking positive, can look forward and can build tomorrow. We don't have anything today, but can we build for tomorrow? And that's where this is coming from. I have to always think of this one here. What is the number one role of any leader in one single word in every culture over the earth? What do you think? The role, the word that summarizes the role of a leader in one single word in across cultures. If you want to find a leader, what will that word be? Please. To inspire. In, I would say, 2 years, you're the first person who come up with the first answer that way. It is actually to inspire. Because if leaders don't inspire, they are not leaders. If I cannot affect you and engage with you, I'm not a leader. Now, if the leader is to inspire, how many of us actually are inspired today in this room? Don't answer this question, but are you inspired? Ask yourself that question. Who is inspiring you? What is the source of your inspiration? And if you have no answer to these two questions, it is important that you seek answer to these questions. Because the absence of inspiration will only be replaced by vacuum. And one of the main symptoms of the vacuum is you feel time pass very fast. When you look at your goals, you feel you haven't achieved much. Year has passed. That's a symptom of a vacuum that exists within. And it's very crucial. The third question, are you a source of inspiration to anybody? Who have children? Be honest with yourself, don't answer the question here. But do you believe you are a source of inspiration to your children? Hopefully, yes. The tragedy when Tom and Jerry is the source of inspiration instead of you, instead of the parents. So am I inspired? What is the source of my inspiration? And do I inspire others? The technical part of the story is that when we designed a leadership program, we looked at these elements. The reason for it, we wanted to have a systemized, structured methodology to identify and build leaders. It's almost like a factory. We wanted also to ensure that we have a comprehensive approach to how do we identify and target leaders. And I'm talking about people from the age of 22 till the age of 45 plus. They are split later, I'll share that with you, into multiple groups. And we wanted to make sure that we increase the retention of high potential staff, because there will be people who could be a secretary, but they have a potential to lead, and we didn't want to lose them. Or in this case, the governments didn't want to lose them. Organizations, semi-governments didn't want to lose them. Leverage the existing foundations in order to help in building leadership, development, and finally empower the organization to deploy and practice strategic management or deploy the strategic plan in the organization. We went through an integrated approach by identifying these objectives, and accordingly, we worked on developing career management process. Any organization that does not have a career management system is at risk of losing its talent. And with the digital world, people would leave if they don't see how they grow, if they can't see their path within the organization. And among 920 people, we had to develop a complete career path for each and every individual of them. Not a 1-year path, not a 2 years path. It's a 7 years path that has to be designed for each one of them. This type of process has helped the retention and improved the integration, not only of the people involved in the training, but also the stakeholders who are going to deliver the training and coaching. This is a sample of the output. The bottom is the age, and we map every person. Are you aware of the levels of work and compatibility theory? Which these are the 7 tracks of how people grow from being individual task performers all the way to leading corporations or in corporations. And people on this program will be identified depending on an assessment process which I will share, where they fit when we look at their age and we look at their level of competency. So the government, the organization, actually from day one, they have a complete chart of all the people that have gone. By the way, the total number of people who have gone through this process now has exceeded 1,800 people over a span of 5 years. And these are individuals who each one of them had to go through such a draft, such a page. What also we did is, in the design of the program, we looked at the research, we researched the best practices in the world. How does BP design, develop, identify leaders? How does the US government identifies and puts leaders? How does GE, Boeing, Shell? And actually there were visits to these places. It wasn't just a research on the internet or a book. There were visits into these places. Identify the best practice, and later in the program, but people, leaders, went and worked for a week in one of these organizations, excluding the presidential campaign, of course. But they actually went for a week, stayed on the premises, listened and worked with people and leaders in those organizations so that they can compare reality with theory and get the practice hands-on. This is one of the project design process where we map the competency models, and very few organizations have defined competency models or competency frameworks. We defined that for the particular government, particular organization, mapped it against the profile assessment solutions and the profile competency model that we use in the 360 checkpoint. We then did consultancy, focus groups, personal interviews, face-to-face, identified and mapped them against tools, and linked them with every competency, with what kind of tool, did a pilot project where we brought 50 people, went through that assessment process, and based on the output, we validated that output with the direct managers of the 50 people to make sure that we got it right, and then we started rolling it to the 1,800, or the real number is about 5,000, because for every 35 people, there are 500 people who apply. Every 500 people, for every group is 35, for every 35 selected people, 500 people usually apply for this program. And you can imagine how rigorous the assessment process to filter out individuals. This is one way of how we worked about it, where we looked at promising leaders, young leaders, mature leaders. I've changed the name mature. There's a name there, but for political reasons I didn't want to put it. And executive forums. Each group represents an age group. You can see at the bottom, 22 to 25, 28 to 34, 34 to 45 plus. And within each group age category, the average number of groups is 3. So in 1 year, you will be running about 11 or 12 different groups performing that task. Now, you might ask yourself, what is the objective of all this? The government and semi-government organizations wanted to create change of agent change and champions of change in the various organizations' places. They wanted to put people who can go and start putting seeds for new ideas, a new direction. You heard about 2022, World Expo, 2020 with Qatar, and they wanted to start today, in fact they started 8 years ago, to create people and champions who can go, talk that language, plan, create teams around them to move the government strategy, to bring the strategy into reality. And that's why they started 8 years ago, before the crisis. And we looked at 3 areas: personal development, what about us, technical knowledge, the technical skills, and management acumen, the ability to manage operations. The average duration of any program is between 12 months and 7 years. So we have programs, this could go for a certain group 12 months, it could go for 18, 24, all the way to 7 years, depending on where they are in their life cycle. Methods that we did, we had academic literature coming in, real-time case studies, so we took real government country issues, and the country issues are studied through the case studies by those leaders. It's not about a case study made somewhere else and brought in. To solve the challenges that the government, the country, go through, work-related, every module, every learning in the classroom was linked to the job description in their company. And I'm talking about 35 people, they could belong to 20 different organizations. They're not from the same organization. But each learning outcome would be linked to the job description and performance that they have. Then we moved into using the graduate, the alumni, to become the new coaches of the new groups. So coaching and mentorship was a critical element. And then we had a board who would monitor and ensure that what the vendors promised, what the trainers promised, what the people are getting is actually happening. So that it doesn't become an exercise, a cosmetic exercise taking place. Another key element of the project was branding. branding the entire project, so people would be chasing and fighting to be part of that project. Company like Unilever, anybody here from Unilever? Okay. Company like Unilever in Dubai and Unilever in Hindustan, they end up with certain programs as part of this project, where because of the branding, you would have 100 people applying to select 5 of them or 7 only who were allowed to this program. And because of the branding, the image that was built around it. The assessment strategy, we looked at the competency framework and the assessment objectives. We identified the roles and target jobs. You go the assessment using the 360 checkpoint that we have and the Profile XD. Then the output, which we development requirements, leadership the competence, reality check, and so on. At the end, it's the leadership indexing the organization and the specific training needs analysis for the entire organization. And this would be done and repeated all in an automated manner. But when this was done, we had this challenge here, the coaching. Every group, you could see that we had face-to-face, the X's and Y's and Z are an average of about 100 people, and every participant would go through a 1 day per month for 1 year, or 2 days per month for 1 year, in addition to email and phone, in terms of coaching face-to-face or over the phone. We make sure that we link what they learn together with their jobs, with their performance. Where was the problem? And that's where I'm shifting gears now from the technical to personal. The problem was that people went through best training from a technical point of view. They went to their offices, 90 days, the whole thing fell apart again. Because the training was great, the trainer was excellent, but people went back to their old habits. And we kept doing this for about 2 years, figuring out what's going wrong. We're bringing people from Harvard. We're bringing people from Duke, we're bringing people from NCR, from Lin Wan Yong in Hong Kong. So from a technical point of view, everything was perfect. But where was the problem? We were doing it the wrong way. People were going through leadership training programs, leaving leadership programs without knowing why they exist. What's their purpose in life? Now, if somebody doesn't know their purpose in their life, how will they lead their life effectively? How many of us in this room, give the answer to yourself, know why they exist? Know why they are waking up every morning to go and do what they want to do? How many of us know how their life should look like? Have they actually defined it? I do wish everybody. Usually few of us have even thought, why do I exist? What's my purpose in life? So when we figured this out, we started providing them this context. And we said, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do with your life? Why do you exist? And we would go through about half a day only to answer this one question. And these would be the future politicians of tomorrow in those countries. So why do you exist? What is your life? How do you want to look? How do you want it to look like? Another area we said, fine, it doesn't matter what do you want to do with your life. But let's look at this graph. And please do that mentally, don't say anything verbally. Just try to mentally do it. All of us we have certain age, and we have a certain level of effort or readiness. Our readiness to take risk decreases as we grow older, definitely, but also because our responsibilities increase. At the same time, our ability to produce physical productivity, we grow old, except for women. And when it comes to physical productivity, we become lazy or our effort is less and less. The question is, at that intersection point, we are usually at the age of 45, 50. If whatever you've done between 20 and 45 is determining what's happening 45 and beyond. If you have been leading a good life, you knew your goals, you drove your vision, you were proactive, most likely you will have a sustainable life, but if not, you'll probably be miserable. Worried how to pay your bills tomorrow. Worried about blaming the whole world for your problems. And when we started putting this and saying, okay, now that we know this, how old am I now? So now you do the mental math in your brain, please. Look how old, think of how old are you today, and how many years left to reach 45. And if we crossed it, then think of it 60. And see how many years left for you to reach there. And to make it better, convert the years to number of hours or days you could. And what you can do in this case is what you probably thought that you have a lot of time to reach 45 or 50 or 60, doesn't matter, you actually don't have much time, because whatever number of years left to that age, divide that by 3. And what you are left with is only 1/3 of that time. And that is the only productive time probably left. And I'm not taking into consideration sickness, traffic, interruptions, and being lazy, or weekends, holidays. I haven't taken any of that. I've assumed you sleep 8 hours, you work 8 hours, and hopefully you're going to play 8 hours. That's why we said, okay, now when we brought this concept into their mind, what started to happen? I'll give you the quote. One of the reactions began saying, "Today you slapped us." And he gave us a slap. Because they realized that after they're working 20 years or 30 years, or 10 years for the younger ones, they looked at what they have achieved, and they're not happy with whatever they have achieved. It's a waking up call for people to do it. Now, what's the objective of this exercise? We said, forget about the organization, forget about jobs and salaries. All this is our only means for you to achieve a better life. And if you don't take that responsibility, nobody else will do it on your behalf. And that's how we did, by reversing the process and say, you take ownership over your future, not the government, not the people, not the street, not the organization. You are responsible for your growth. Now, I have a concrete 920 personal action plans by people who went through this process, and they wrote their full action plan up to 15 years. Now imagine when somebody has a clear plan over their life, now they know why they exist. Do I need to tell them to do something? Most likely no. They take initiative, they take ownership, and now they drive change positively. And this is what happened in this case. We asked them also, let's look at time and say, how do you want people to remember you? We're all going there one day. How do you want to be remembered? Forget about the country, forget about the organization. How do you want to be remembered? What do you want to leave behind you? What's the legacy? And imagine saying this to a politician. It's not easy to do it, especially with people of 45 and above, or 50 and above. A lot of resistance at the beginning. But we said, if you want to move forward, you want to have an impact on the society, you need to define what do you want to do, how do you want to be remembered in this life. Now there's one guy in Japan who did this exercise for real. The whole course actually run by having coffins in the hall, real coffins, and he makes people, when they're going through this process, go and sleep in those coffins. Now imagine your life after that. I wouldn't go that extreme, but they actually did it in Japan. And it's a life transformation for them, because now you are really in touch emotionally with what could have happened or what could happen in the future. And when we ask them, what do you think, how do you want to be remembered, they have to understand first the roles they perform. How many of us, when they know the roles they perform? We go and spend money on leadership development, but do they know the roles that they perform in the organizations? The roles they perform on the street? The roles they perform at home, in the family? If I don't know these roles, it'll be very hard for me to define the expectations. How do I want to be remembered by them? Your role as a mother, how do you want your children to remember you tomorrow? Your role as a sister, as a teacher, as a manager, how do you want your stakeholders to remember you tomorrow? You see what I'm trying to do here? I'm shifting from the technical skill, how to negotiate, how to communicate, how to build teams, how to produce results, to clean up my act, know why I exist, and then all that becomes a default, a bypass product, not the reverse way that we were doing it today. The fourth item was vision. We asked them, what's your vision in life, as to enable them to find out their role in life. And we have asked them, write down your vision, go through a process. Now, how many governments you know have publicly announced their vision in writing with the signature of the cabinet minister? Anywhere in the world? Probably we don't have. But in these two governments, they actually announced in writing, in a text, published, given to people, and said, this is what we're committing to in the next 20 years, until 2035. And this is who's going to do what. Having clarity of vision, the impact was on people, but also on the business community. Now, me as a business, I know that where the direction of the government is, and I will invest and focus there. The other area we looked at, and this is a very beautiful one. How many of you in this room know their values? Raise your hands. How many in this room know their values? Okay. How many of you have actually written it once in your life? Okay, hands are less. If few of us have, let's assume, written it, or have thought about it, how are you raising your children? If you haven't defined the value system that you want that will govern your life, and you would like to bring it up to your children. And you know, when they say, I have them, I ask them, write them down. How many of them would have integrity and don't lie one of their values? All of them. And then I ask the question, when was it the last time you lied? 5 minutes ago. Now that's a life demonstration in schizophrenic personality. I'd like to say something, but I actually believe something different. And this is the primary cause, one of the root cause of our problems, not only organizations, but also at the level of societies and nations. So when we ask these leaders, write down your values, define your values, it's an exercise that took 2 days to complete. But once they defined their values, they were able to define the behaviors, and accordingly they were able to execute those behaviors. And why organizations, their culture, sometimes they mess up? Because the values have not been identified as a clear way of doing things in that organization. And we end up always with the value system of the most dominant person in the organization. And we're lucky. If he or she has a good value system, probably will adopt one. If not, it'll be more of a negative one. The other area we looked at, positive thinking. How many of us, today when we talked about, it was a very beautiful exercise, I learned from it a lot, the way I describe myself versus the others, how they see me. How many of us today, when they woke up this morning and said, today I'll have a great day? Versus others who said, today it'll be another lousy day, come on, I'll go and sit on the chair for a whole day, it'll be boring. And rest assured, if you thought positive, you will get a positive experience. If you thought negative, you will get a negative experience. You will find every reason to shoot me down today if you didn't want to be here now. And if you thought positive, you will find a positive way of doing things. Now, self-talk, when it comes to positive, knowing, being aware of our self-talk. What do I tell myself about myself? What do I tell myself about my organization? What do I tell myself about my country? What do I tell myself about my people? And the worst is, what do you tell yourself about your children? So when you see, those of you who have children, when you see in your children, what do you see? Try today, tonight, this evening, go back home and look at your children and ask yourself, what do you see when you look at your children? Do you see the troublemaker child? Do you see the child who's making my life hell? Do you see the child who's a greatest gift given to me? Do you see this child as a future raw material for the future of Romania? What do you see when you look at your children? If I can identify what goes in my mind, and I can then hopefully convert the negative part into positive, that should have an impact on us. And you cannot have a leader in an organization or a productive member in a community who is negatively self-talking, always telling themselves the negative things. And for that, what we end up, we take them to an exercise. They actually define all the self-talk, and they sometimes, I had one of the guys jumping up in the middle of the room and said, "Now I know why my wife divorced me." Seriously. And we thought he was joking. Later in the break, I just went and asked him what's going on. And he said, "I've been telling myself, I've been acting this way, and these behaviors were caused by this perception or belief about my wife. And accordingly, she divorced me. But it was too late." So it's a crucial exercise for us to understand, define what drives our self-talk, how positive, how negative that self-talk is, and look at when we sit and talk in our community meetings. Do we talk and do we see ourselves projecting positive or negative of the talk? Once we do this, we then look at the attitude. Because by definition, attitude is nothing but a summation of behaviors executed over time in a consistent manner in different situations. And how many of us once said, especially those who are married, "I will change her, she will change once we are married"? And how many of us actually won that war? We don't change. And unless I choose somebody, a partner, who is aligned with me at the very beginning, it's very hard to assume, it's not right to assume that tomorrow change will take place. Any change taking place will only be in line with the value system that person has, with the structure of that person has. It will not change in totality. What I'd like to invite for all of us is think of it when you go and design leadership programs. You're working in leadership programs, government, semi-government, organizations. Ask yourself and make people learn, how do they want to be remembered? And I would encourage each one in this room to answer this question for themselves only. How do you want to be remembered tomorrow? And make a decision, a conscious decision, that I will make a difference. I want to make a positive difference, not a negative one. I want to make a positive difference. I can talk to you about excuses, the whole night, but it's about a choice I made. Do I want to make that difference? Do I want to be positive, making that difference, or do I want a negative one? And when you go away tonight and look at your family members, look at your life, look at the people you deal with, look at organizations, are you contributing positively to that environment, to your stakeholders, or are you contributing negatively? Are you being part of the problem, or are you being part of the solution? Do you look at the way things in a way constructive to grow, or do you have an axe in your hand and chattering, cutting every possible initiative of moving forward? The choice at the end is ours, is in each one of us, and at the end of the day, our life and the environments we are in is nothing but the picture of the negative. The negative, the old films, the Kodak old films. Our picture today is nothing but a reflection of that negative film. You need to examine that negative film and identify where do you need to make modifications, and then work on them to change the world. And the definition of leadership, of madness in management. It's when you expect a change in the output without making any change in the input or the way you do things. That's a true madness. And I will conclude by asking you, ask yourself, when was it the last time you've done something for the first time? The longer you have to think about the question, the more likely you have been in a complacent life. And if you can get the answer very quickly, it means you're more into a dynamic one. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.